The Zelda franchise has some of the most divisive fan theories in gaming history, from timeline debates that have raged for decades to theories that fundamentally change how you see entire games. These aren't just fun speculation. They're controversies that split the community, contradict official lore, and make you question what's real. Today, I'm ranking the 8 most controversial theories from least to most insane, starting with one that's technically official canon, but fans still refuse to accept it: the downfall timeline. Here's the thing about the downfall timeline: it's not a fan theory, it's official Nintendo lore published in Hyrule Historia in 2011, and that's exactly why it's so controversial. The downfall timeline is the third branch of the Zelda timeline that splits off from Ocarina of Time. Unlike the adult and child timelines, which have clear in-game explanations, the downfall timeline only exists if Link loses the final battle against Ganondorf. The entire branch is based on a game over screen becoming canon. In this timeline, Ganon gets the full Triforce. The 7 sages seal him in the Sacred Realm, and every classic 2D Zelda game follows. A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, the Oracle games, the original Legend of Zelda, and Zelda 2 all live here. But here's where it gets weird. There's zero in-game mechanism that creates this timeline. The adult timeline exists because Zelda sends Link back in time. That makes sense. The downfall timeline just assumes Link died, and reality split because of it. The logical problem is immediate. If Link's death creates a timeline branch, why doesn't every game over in every Zelda game do the same? You'd have infinite timelines. The entire concept collapses, and the timing is suspiciously convenient. Twilight Princess kills Ganondorf permanently. A Link to the Past requires Ganondorf to be alive and sealed in the Sacred Realm. If Ganondorf dies in the child timeline, ALTTP can't happen there. The downfall timeline solves this by routing ALTTP away from Twilight Princess entirely. It's a plot patch disguised as lore. Nintendo's explanation in Hyrule Historia is deliberately vague. It just says Link challenged Ganondorf and lost. No explanation for why this particular failure fractures reality when others don't. Defenders point to a cancelled Retro Studios Zelda pitch from 2005 that referenced a hero fails scenario, suggesting the concept existed internally before 2011. Eiji Aonuma claimed the team reviewed ancient documents to construct the timeline. And Ocarina of Time was originally designed as an A Link to the Past prequel, so the downfall branch honors that intent. But that doesn't change the fact that this is the foundation of every timeline argument in Zelda fandom. Fans who accept it see 7 classic games as one coherent story. Fans who reject it see proof Nintendo stitched together a timeline after the fact. It's officially canon, but the debate over whether it should be has never stopped. At least the downfall timeline is just a structural problem. Unlike the next theory, which asks you to believe in something Nintendo explicitly said doesn't exist. But that doesn't change the fact that this is the foundation of every timeline argument in Zelda fandom. Fans who accept it see 7 classic games as part of one coherent story. Fans who reject it see proof that Nintendo stitched together a timeline after the fact with duct tape and good intentions. It's officially canon, but the debate over whether it should be has never stopped. At least the downfall timeline is just a structural problem with the lore, unlike the next theory, which asks you to believe in something Nintendo explicitly said doesn't exist. The Tetraforce. The Triforce has 3 pieces: power, a wisdom, courage. 3 golden triangles forming one larger triangle. Except there's a 4th triangle right there in the empty space at the center, and some fans have been arguing it's real since the late 1990s, making this one of the oldest theories in Zelda history. Before you dismiss this, the visual evidence is genuinely compelling. The Hylian shield in Ocarina of Time has 4 triangles on it, 3 at the top forming the Triforce, and a completely separate 4th triangle at the bottom beneath the Loftwing crest. Why would Nintendo put that there if it didn't mean anything? Twilight Princess has 4 light spirits instead of 3. Wind Waker's Princess Zelda goes by the name Tetra, which is Greek for 4. Majora's Mask features 4 great fairies representing courage, wisdom, power, and a mysterious 4th virtue called kindness. Zelda even mentions a goddess of time in Majora's Mask, separate from the 3 golden goddesses. The Desert Colossus has a goddess of the sand. Either of those could represent a 4th divine being that nobody talks about. The theory got a massive revival in 2024 with Echoes of Wisdom. The game introduced Null, a primordial void entity that existed before the 3 golden goddesses created the world. Some fans argued that Null literally represents the center of the Triforce, the 4th piece that was always there, defined by absence instead of presence. But here's the problem. Shigeru Miyamoto explicitly denied the Tetraforce exists. Later games quietly removed the 4th triangle from the Hylian shield design. The complete Triforce has been obtained and used multiple times across the series, and only 3 pieces ever appear. The number 3 is structurally fundamental to everything Zelda does. 3 goddesses, 3 Triforce pieces, 3 recurring characters, 3 dungeon story arcs. Tri literally means 3. Zelda Dungeon even published a satirical article called The Entirely Valid, Completely Believable Theory of a Tetraforce just to capture how the community feels about it. Everyone knows it's not real. The creator killed it himself. But Nintendo Nintendo keeps accidentally or deliberately dropping visual hints into new games that make people wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's something they're not telling us. It's a theory that refuses to die despite being officially debunked, which is fitting for a piece that supposedly exists in empty space. At least it's harmless speculation about a magical artifact. The next theory is about whether your childhood friends were already dead when you tried to save them. The dead sages. Every friend Link tries to save in Ocarina of Time was already dead before he reached them, and I can prove it. The theory is simple. The 6 sages that Link awakens during the adult timeline, Saria, Darunia, Ruto, Impa, Naburu, and the nameless one in the Shadow Temple, were killed before Link ever arrived. What appears in the Chamber of Sages are their spirits. Link doesn't save anyone. He shows up too late every single time. Let's go through the evidence. Saria enters the Forest Temple alone, unarmed, as a child. She's never seen inside the dungeon. Darunia charges into the Fire Temple to fight Volvagia without the Megaton Hammer, the only weapon that can kill the dragon. He just vanishes. Volvagia is known to eat Gorons. Ruto appears briefly in the Water Temple, then disappears entirely before you fight Morpha. Impa enters the Shadow Temple, a literal torture dungeon full of death traps, completely alone to seal Bongo Bongo. Naburu gets kidnapped and brainwashed by Twin Rova right in front of you. None of them are ever seen physically in Hyrule again after awakening. They only exist in the Chamber of Sages, a space within the sacred realm, not the physical world. During the ending celebration, the sages watch from a distant mountaintop, separate from everyone else. They don't come down, they don't mingle with the living. Meanwhile, Mido and King Zora are shown staring downward, seemingly mourning. Mido was Saria's closest friend. King Zora is Ruto's father. Saria tells Link they were destined to live in different worlds. Ruto says she can never be with him now. But here's the counter-argument. In Wind Waker, Ganondorf kills the sages to depower the Master Sword, which implies sages need to be alive to function. A Link to the Past mentions the sages had descendants, meaning they survived long enough to have children in the Downfall timeline. Some fans argue awakening is spiritual transcendence, not death. No developer has ever confirmed or denied this. The ambiguity seems entirely deliberate. The game lets kids see a triumphant adventure, while adults read between the lines and find a story where Link loses every friend he made, one dungeon at a time. It's been debated for over 25 years. At least, those friends might have died serving a purpose. The hero of time himself got an ending that was so much worse. The hero's shade, the skeletal warrior who teaches sword techniques in Twilight Princess, is the ghost of Ocarina of Time's Link, and his fate is one of the most tragic endings any video game hero has ever received. Hyrule Historia confirmed this in 2013. The hero's shade is the hero of time. But here's what makes it devastating. After saving Hyrule and Termina, Link returned home and was never recognized as a hero. He lived out his life in obscurity, died consumed by regret, and was cursed to linger as an undead spirit for centuries. The darker version claims he literally became a Stalfos, a skeleton warrior, by getting lost in the Lost Woods without Navi. The evidence is methodical. Ocarina of Time explicitly states that adults who enter the Lost Woods without a fairy become Stalfos. Navi abandoned Link at the end of Ocarina of Time. He entered the Lost Woods at the start of Majora's Mask, searching for her. He no longer had the protection that marked him as Kokiri. The Hyrule Encyclopedia reportedly classifies the hero's shade as a Stalfos outright. The in-game details are haunting. The shade's combat stance perfectly mirrors Ocarina of Time Link's Z-targeting shuffle. The Howling Stone melodies are songs from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, including the Song of Healing, the melody used to free tortured spirits in Majora's Mask. The shade calls Twilight Princess Link my child, establishing a bloodline. His armor resembles the hero's clothes, but is tattered and ancient. He appears as a golden wolf in the light world, but transforms into a skeletal warrior in a shadowy void. His final words are what seal it. Although I accepted life as the hero, I could not convey the lessons of that life to those who came after. At last, I have eased my regrets. He died with regrets. The child who saved the world was sent back in time, stripped of his accomplishments, forgotten by history, and cursed to wander as a skeleton for hundreds of years until he could pass his knowledge to a descendant. The first Howling Stone melody being the Song of Healing implies the shade himself needs healing, just like the tortured dead of Termina. This theory transforms the franchise's most beloved protagonist into one of gaming's most tragic figures. When Hyrule Historia confirmed the hero's shade was the hero of time, it was one of the Zelda community's biggest vindications and heartbreaks simultaneously. Ocarina of Time's happy ending was a lie. Link got sent home and everything went wrong, but at least Link's tragedy happened after his games ended. The next theory claims an entire timeline was shattered by one recent game, Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom didn't just complicate the Zelda timeline, it fundamentally contradicted the established founding of Hyrule and created what many fans consider an irreconcilable rupture in the entire series' continuity. The contradiction is stark, and Skyward Sword establishes that Link and Zelda, who is Hylia's mortal reincarnation, descended from Skyloft to the surface and founded the Kingdom of Hyrule. This was treated as bedrock lore for over a decade. Tears of the Kingdom reveals that Hyrule was actually founded by Zonai King Rauru and his Hylian wife, Queen Sonia. Characters with zero connection to Skyloft, Hylia's descent, or anything Skyward Sword established. Tears of the Kingdom depicts an imprisoning war where Rauru seals Ganondorf, but this conflicts with a link to the past imprisoning war, which has completely different circumstances. An Ocarina of Time's timeline of when Ganondorf first appeared. The Zora and Rito already exist in Tears of the Kingdom's ancient past, but are completely absent from Skyward Sword. The Master Sword appears in Rauru's era, but he doesn't recognize it, despite it being the legendary blade forged to seal evil. This has generated the most heated lore debate in modern Zelda fandom. Multiple competing theories try to reconcile it. The refounding theory suggests Rauru established a second Hyrule thousands of years after Skyward Sword's kingdom collapsed. Director Fujibayashi partially supported this by saying Hyrule may have been established and crumbled more than once. The soft reboot theory argues Nintendo intentionally superseded prior lore. The literal legend theory claims that because the franchise is called The Legend of Zelda, all events are unreliable, oral histories and contradictions are features, not bugs. The developer response has been deliberately unhelpful. When asked which timeline branch Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom occupy, Fujibayashi said, "That's up to the player's imagination, isn't it?" Aonuma confirmed Breath of the Wild sits at the very end of the timeline but refused to specify which branch. Nintendo's official Zelda website places both games in a separate section, disconnected from the three established branches entirely. For fans who spent decades constructing timeline theories, this felt like Nintendo saying the timeline they published was never meant to be taken seriously. It's a meta-controversy that cuts deeper than any single theory, because it questions whether Nintendo cares about continuity at all. At least Tears of the Kingdom's timeline problems are abstract lore debates. The next theory forces you to confront whether completing the game's objective makes you a hero or a mass murderer. Link's Awakening. In Link's Awakening, the entire island of Koholint exists within the dream of the Windfish. By completing the game and waking the Windfish, Link deliberately destroys the entire island and every conscious being on it. From a certain angle, Link commits genocide to save himself. The game does not hide this. The bosses, called Nightmares, explicitly warn Link that waking the Windfish will destroy everything. They tell him the island will vanish. They're not lying. From their perspective, they aren't villains. They're fighting for the survival of their world and everyone in it. Link is the threat. The NPCs of Koholint display genuine consciousness. They have relationships, hopes, fears, dreams. Marin rescued Link from the beach, developed feelings for him, and dreams of leaving the island to travel the world. She sings on the beach. She has a personality. Tarin worries about his daughter. The fisherman under the bridge has his own little life. These aren't mindless dream constructs. They act like real people. Yet Link proceeds anyway. The ending shows Koholint dissolving into nothing. Link wakes up on debris in the middle of the ocean. If you complete the game without dying, Marin appears briefly as a seagull, suggesting some fragment of her persists, but not as the person she was. The darker extension notes that Link is now stranded on wreckage in open ocean with no rescue in sight. His heroic choice might have been mutual destruction. Here's where it gets worse. The owl who guides Link throughout the game is revealed to be a manifestation of the Windfish itself. This means the Windfish manipulated Link into destroying the island for its own freedom. The Nightmares were the only ones telling Link the truth about what would happen. They were honest. The owl lied by omission. Counter-arguments hold that the Islanders aren't truly alive. They're dream constructs, not independently conscious beings. The Zelda Encyclopedia confirms that Link survived and appears in the Oracle games afterward, so he wasn't stranded. Some argue the Nightmares are the real threat, keeping the Windfish trapped in unnatural sleep, and liberation is morally correct. But the game itself refuses to make this easy. It presents the dilemma without judgment. Marin's final words haunt you. The Nightmares' warnings echo. As Zelda Dungeon's analysis concluded, there is no true villain, just different parties fighting for survival in a world that gave them cruel fates. This theory ranks high because it doesn't just reinterpret the game, it forces you to question whether completing any Zelda game's objectives makes the hero good. Link saved himself, but he destroyed an entire world to do it. Whether that was right is a question the game leaves unanswered. At least Link's Awakening lets you debate morality. The next two theories don't give you that option. They just tell you the game you loved was about death all along. Majora's Mask. The 5 main regions of Majora's Mask each correspond to one of the 5 stages of grief. Clocktown is denial, Woodfall is anger, Snowhead is bargaining, Great Bay is depression, and Ikana Valley is acceptance. The entire game is a structured exploration of how people face death. The parallels are methodical. Clocktown represents denial. Residents stubbornly refuse to acknowledge the moon is falling. The mayor dismisses warnings as groundless theory. Carnival of Time preparations continue as if nothing is wrong. Everyone acts like everything is fine while the apocalypse looms overhead. Woodfall represents anger. The Deku King is consumed by irrational rage over his daughter's disappearance and intends to execute an innocent monkey. His fury blinds him to reason. The entire region is poisoned by his wrath. Snowhead represents bargaining. The ghost of Goron hero, Darmani, desperately begs Link to resurrect him so he can save his people. He cannot accept his death. He pleads for another chance, trying to negotiate with fate itself. Great Bay represents depression. Zora singer Lulu stands motionless and catatonic on the shore, staring at the sea. She cannot speak. She cannot sing. She lost her eggs and shut down completely. She embodies hopelessness. Akana Valley represents acceptance, a literal land of the dead where spirits have made peace with their fate. The undead walk freely but without malice. Link uses light arrows to guide them to rest. It's the only region where death is acknowledged, processed, and overcome. But here's where it gets deeper. Every transformation mask contains the soul of a dead person. The Deku Butler's murdered son, the fallen Goron hero, Darmani, the fatally wounded Zora guitarist, Mikau. Link doesn't just visit these regions. He literally becomes the dead. He wears their faces and lives through their grief. The game's constant 3-day cycle of impending annihilation creates existential dread unmatched in Nintendo's catalog. Even the number 4 carries weight. In Japanese, Shai means both 4 and death. This theory received partial confirmation from the game's director. In a 2015 Game Informer interview, Eiji Aonuma said, "It's certainly true that each one of these different episodes has a different emotional cast to it. One feels like it's tinged with sadness and another with anger. That certainly was intentional." He stopped short of endorsing the 5 stages framework specifically, but he confirmed the emotional intentionality behind each region. Skeptics argue the theory projects a Western psychological model onto a Japanese game. The Kubler-Ross model itself has been criticized by psychologists as overly rigid. The grief framework applies to individual characters within each region rather than the region's entire thematic identity. But as a thematic reading, the theory has proven remarkably durable. It stands independently from darker theories about Link's fate. Link could be grieving Navi's departure, his stolen childhood, or simply witnessing a world in crisis. It reframes one of Nintendo's most celebrated games as something children were never meant to fully understand. Which brings us to the most famous Zelda theory of all time, the one that claims Link didn't just witness death in Majora's Mask, he experienced it. Link is dead. Link was killed during his fall into Termina at the very start of Majora's Mask. The entire game takes place in Purgatory as his soul processes death before moving on. This is arguably the most famous video game fan theory of all time, and despite being thoroughly debunked, it refuses to die. The evidence is seductive. Link falls an impossibly long distance through a surreal, psychedelic tunnel, the kind of fall that should be fatal. The name Termina derives from terminal, meaning relating to death or an ending. Every NPC is a doppelganger of someone from Hyrule, as if Link's dying mind is projecting familiar faces. The Happy Mask salesman's repeated line, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" plays every time Link dies, suggesting it refers not to the Deku curse, but to Link's actual death. The cyclical 3-day time loop traps Link in repetition, like a soul unable to move on. The Elegy of Emptiness creates hollow statues with dead, vacant eyes, memorials to the departed. The moon children inside the moon were the Happy Mask salesman's face, sitting beneath a tree, like the Buddha achieving enlightenment, and ask Link to play. A final reckoning before passing on. This theory was massively popularized by MatPat's Game Theory YouTuber video, which brought it to millions of viewers and made it a cornerstone of internet gaming culture. It transformed Majora's Mask from the weird Zelda game into the game about a dead child wandering the afterlife. For many casual fans, this reading became the definitive interpretation. The debunking, however, is comprehensive. Hyrule Historia confirms that the hero of time survived Majora's Mask, returned to Hyrule, lived long enough to have descendants, and became the hero's shade in Twilight Princess. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Link definitively did not die as a child. Eiji Aonuma confirmed Termina is a real parallel world, not an afterlife or dreamscape. Entirely new characters like Kafei exist in Termina with no Hyrule counterpart, breaking the projections of a dying mind framework. Key figures like Princess Zelda and the Kokiri have no Termina doppelgangers. The end credits show Link alive, riding Epona through the Lost Woods. Yet the theory persists because it feels true. Majora's Mask is drenched in death, loss, and surreal despair in a way no other Nintendo game approaches. The theory doesn't survive factual scrutiny, but it captures the game's emotional truth so precisely that millions of fans prefer it to the official explanation. It ranks as the most insane theory not because it's the darkest, but because it redefines an entire beloved game as something its creators say it isn't, and a staggering number of people believe it anyway. The fact that it coexists with the officially confirmed Hero's Shade lore creates a bizarre situation where fans know Link survived, but emotionally feel like he didn't. Nintendo killed the theory. The community keeps resurrecting it. In a game about death and resurrection, that's almost poetic. These 8 theories represent the full spectrum of Zelda controversy, from officially canon concepts the community rejects, to ideas developers acknowledged, to debunked theories that refuse to die. The common thread is they all fundamentally change how you experience the games they describe. Once you consider them, you can never play those games the same way again. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.